All right, what is up, everybody? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's been almost a week. I've been out, been under the weather. It's good to see everybody. Before we get started, if you guys can hear me okay, just please put a 1 in the chat before we get going here. Let's see, I'm just checking my settings. Looks good here. Good to see everybody. As always, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to watch the show. Today is going to be an exciting one. So many things. Just before the live show, I was uncovering. And obviously, this is stuff that people have been reporting, and it's mainly coming from Fitz News, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But I mean, it's crazy. Finally, this big puzzle of a mystery when it comes to the Stephen Smith case, I think finally is coming together, in my opinion. You may feel differently, and you're definitely entitled to that, but we'll get into it. But as always, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm Chris with Monsters Under Our Bed. We cover true crime, mystery to the missing, and we always like to give back by featuring missing people at the beginning of the show. So we're going to do that really quickly. Today we have she likes to go by Etta Lynn Grau. She went missing on March 15th of this year in Pinellas County, which is in Florida. She is 19 years old, brown hair. Let me zoom it in a little bit for you guys. Brown hair, brown eyes, 5'4" and 100 pounds. In the details, she was last seen at 4125 Park Street in St. Petersburg, Florida. And it says that she suffers from various mental disorders and has the mental capacity of a 7-year-old. And it's believed that she could be traveling with an unknown male. She has previously lived in Illinois, has family in Indiana. So there could be many places that she could have gone to, but hopefully her family can get answers and she returns home safe. If you have any information, you can call 727-582-6483. All right, and we got one more. This is Caitlin Sessions. She went missing yesterday at 6 p.m. So it hasn't even been a full 24 hours since this poor thing went missing. She's just 13 years old. Says she was last seen at 500 block 50th Street Northeast. This is in Washington, D.C. Let's see. Monday at approximately... That's where it says Monday, October 10th. Anyway, but it says that she is 13 years old, 5'1", 130 pounds, black hair with a twist, blue jeans. She was last seen wearing black, white Converse, and black, white stripes Kip Academy jacket. So if you have any information, you call 202-727-9099, and that's Caitlin Session, 13 years old, just went missing out of Washington, D.C. All right, so close that and pull out this. So before we get into the big news, and I'm going to check chat here in just a second, but yeah, absolutely crazy. And we're going to just quickly recap the timeline. I'm sure most of you in here probably know the story, but we'll just recap it for anybody that may be new to this case. And then we'll get into the latest details. I'm just going to make sure this is working real quick. Edgar has been missing for over a year. Okay, so interesting. All right. I was wondering about that because in the thing, it says on March 2023. Oh, I see. Okay, now I see how it's put. Okay, so March 15th is when they issued a purple alert, but she's been missing since September 2022. Got it. All right, thanks, Karen. You are on it. So she has been missing well over a year now. All right, thank you, Karen. Mod's looking out for me. Appreciate it. All right, so we will, let me clear that out. All right, so for anyone that's new to this case, we'll quickly recap it and then we'll start getting into the uh, recent stuff. So, for anybody that doesn't know, Stephen Smith, at the time, he was 19 years old. He was a nursing student from Hampton, South Carolina. Sadly, he was found dead on the early morning hours of July 8th in 2015. He was discovered lying in the middle of the road in a dark country road. Uh, from where his body was, 3 miles away, his car was found. It is believed that his car was found and he ran out of gas and he was possibly walking home and possibly got hit and struck, and it was a hit and run. And they actually ruled it as a hit and run originally. But the mother, Sandy Smith, was a lovely lady, has been fighting for her son this entire time, disputes this and believes there's something else more to it than just that. And we look at the map here, and so this is kind of where Stephen Smith's body was located. And then, so there's this Sandy Run Road right here, which is going to be very important. We're going to be talking about that a lot. And then there's this, it's like 601 and Bamberg Highway that runs this way right here. And his car was found here. And his home is over this way here. So it's definitely possible that he was walking home and he had run out of gas. So moving on, just kind of talk about the scene a little bit. His body was found in the middle of the road. And of course, then law enforcement, they were a little bit skeptical because usually when it comes to a hit and run, and this is going to become important as we talk about this case and the possible puzzle pieces coming together. But usually in a hit and run, and this is why they started feeling differently, especially with the family, is usually with a hit and run, a body, when it gets hit, it goes flying, it gets tossed. Usually shoes come off. And in this instant, Stephen Smith's shoes were actually loose-fitting shoes. And everything was still on his body, you know, especially his shoes. So they thought the scene really was odd. And there wasn't any, as far as we know, there isn't kind of any parts of the vehicle that were at the crime scene to suggest it was, you know, that Smith was hit by a car, so that's why it was kind of odd. And originally they thought there was a gunshot wound because he kind of had a hole in his head, not to get too graphic, but originally they thought he might have had a gunshot, but it was just a deep kind of laceration hole. And we'll kind of talk about what could have caused that later on. And get to chat. Glad to see you're feeling better and back, Chris. Thank you so much, Peggy. And I wish I could get to everybody. But yeah, feeling better. Got a lot to catch up on. Because if I'm not going live or making videos, I don't make money. So got to catch up here. So his car was parked 3 miles away. And it was kind of questioned, was it staged? And if you're, like I said, if you're new to this case and if you're interested after this show, our last show that we did, I think with Steve from True Crime Web, we really delved into his car and all the kind of just odd things and what we believe, how he may have parked it, if he parked it, and different things. But this is his car here. This is where it was parked on Bamberg Highway. And back to the scene, like I said, really it was just Stephen's body laying almost directly right on the line here. The only thing that's really mentioned, as there was a release, was called the Mate Report. And it really only said that there was these 10 1mm single layer paint chips. So little paint chips, 1mm, that were kind of laying on his clothing. And could that be a possible hint to what may have happened to him? So keep that in mind. That is something that we have really covered on this channel before, and especially in prior lives that we talked about. We looked at different items that could have came from that paint, like a bat, a truck, a garbage can, and before I go to that. Also, Steve went out there. So Steve's actually been to the scene, the crime scene, and where his car was parked, and noticed that these, kind of like mile markers, they have these just kind of sitting out every mile, and they're obviously blue painted, and you can actually pull these things out, and some of them are actually, I think Steve said he found like one or two that were actually just laying there. So you can actually pull these things out, and it's definitely possible that it could have been used as a weapon. But once we get caught up, I don't think this was the case, although this was a interesting theory. But we did notice that it was kind of interesting that, there's these blue paint chips, and then here's these signs that you'd find every mile, more or less, that you could use as a weapon to, because the wounds that Stephen had, and we'll not get too graphic, but he had severe trauma to his head. A lot of focus was on the right side of his face, which will become important later on. He had a dislocated right shoulder, so a lot of whatever impacted him would be kind of like on the right side of his body. Keep that in mind. But other than that, really didn't have a full answers to what happened to him until now, at least. So just to dive a little bit deeper into the timeline of Smith, because there's not much, because unfortunately he was in an area where his cell phone was in terrible service. So just to dive a little bit more into the timeline, and then we'll get into the new stuff. So on Tuesday, July 7th, so kind of like the day before, Smith had a morning class, which if I recall, Mark says that he kind of skipped half of it. But either way, he went to school, he came back, he took a shower. He then ran an errand for his father, and he went to a gas station. When he got to the gas station, he did have some trouble with his car. He had to end up calling his sister. His sister came, and she helped get his car going. She does mention that she thought it was a little strange that it seemed like maybe somebody was messing with his car and maybe some wires. We don't know, if that's true or not, or if the wires were just, it was just bad wiring. But anyway, he ran the chore. He got his car going. Eventually came back home for a little bit. And then the last time really anyone would ever see him would be him leaving at approximately, I think, 6 p.m. And then the only source that we know of information as far as what he did after that 6 p.m. really comes from this guy at the bottom left here. Here, let me clear this real quick. Is Mark Bickhart. Now, everything that I'm going to say, you got to kind of take with a grain of salt, because he is kind of seems like a shady character. Now, Mark, this guy here, claims that he was Stephen Smith's boyfriend. And now keep in mind, Stephen Smith was 19, and you got Mark, who, I forget his age, but mid-late 30s, I think, something like that. And he already had kids, so it was kind of a weird situation. But anyway, so this Mark guy is supposedly the last person to talk to Stephen Smith that night. And of course, like I said earlier, since the area that Smith was in, these calls that Mark was having with Smith, they kept dropping. So they would text him text message a little bit, and then he would try to call. And so here's a few things that we know just before the tragic thing that happened to Stephen Smith. So the alleged boyfriend, as we'll call him, Mark Bigheart, claims that that Stephen Smith was supposedly going to come and see him in Beaufort, which is quite a bit of ways, but that clearly never happened. So we're not sure exactly what Smith was doing, and maybe it could have been because of the car trouble. But he was texting and dropping phone calls, but during the few little phone calls he had, one of them, he was talking to Stephen, and Smith said that he was at an Exxon gas station, and this is just quoting here, that he encountered some rednecks that were harassing him, and then apparently the call dropped, and then he tried calling him back, and he spoke with him again, and he was now near Snyder's Crossroad, and he claimed that he was being followed. Sometime during this conversation, Mark heard a semi truck pass by, and he could also hear dogs barking. And he asked Stephen, he said, "Hey, are you walking?" But Stephen told him no, which is kind of weird. So we don't know maybe if Stephen, I don't know, maybe because of the bad cell service, maybe he didn't hear Stephen correctly, or Stephen didn't hear what Mark said. So we don't know really the context to that, but that's what Mark said. Then the very last phone call he talked with Stephen, he heard a big truck with what sounded like mud tires on a truck. And this was around 3:30 a.m. And this was when they believe Stephen Smith was sagically, his life was taken. Of course, I have to use PG language because of YouTube. So here is a shot of the Exxon here, and then this is Snyder's Crossroad, which is not too far, especially the Snyder's Crossroad. It's not too far from where Stephen Smith's car was found. So we talked about that. Here on the map, we kind of see how far away Stephen was from Mark Bigheart. So Mark was in Beaufort, while Stephen was more in the Walterboro, Hampton area here. So this is many, many miles. So, but like I said, Mark claims that the plan is that Stephen was going to come and see him, but for whatever reason, that didn't happen. Let's see. So we'll talk about just this a little bit, and then we'll get into the latest videos. I'll check chat here in just a second. Smith's body. So like I said, after the phone call at 3:30 a.m., that would be the last phone call. And so they think that's when he was hit. Smith's body would be discovered by a passing motorist, a tow truck driver, at approximately 4 a.m. So if he was hit at around 3:30, this guy came across him 30 minutes later, or somewhere in that area, on the early morning of July 8th. His body was literally laying in the middle of the Sandy Run Road. You can see the box here, and I do have a diagram of kind of the position, because that will become important for our theories that we'll talk about here in a little bit. According to what they said, there was significant lacerations. There was a 7-inch in length laceration on his face, which extended across the superior mid to right lateral forehead, involving the right eyebrow, according to the initial autopsy. Because there was a deep kind of like hole, they thought originally it was a gunshot, as I talked earlier, but obviously there's no bullet in him in the autopsy, and nothing that went through. So move on. So eventually, the investigation ended up just stalling for years over inconsistencies as to whether Smith's life was taken by a hit and run or by more nefarious means. The family would hear rumors about Buster Murdaugh, and when they started looking into the Alex Murdaugh trial, and this is what I'm really excited for, on top of the suspects, but this is what I uncovered just before I went live, is what was the connection? What was the connection that brought this whole thing together? And I think I found it. So I'm really excited. That's going to be saved for the end. But the family did hear rumors about Buster Murdaugh possibly being involved. But keep in mind, these were all hearsay. These are all like third party hearsay rumors. But, you know, the family did feel like there was definitely nefarious activity, ill intentions. And there was even speculation that possibly he wasn't even hit, that he was his life was taken somewhere else, and that they staged the scene. So basically, it was life was taken somewhere else, and then they moved the body and placed it in the road to make it look like a hit and run. And then with the minus the no any evidence of car parts or debris at the crime scene, it does make it a little mysterious on that. So now we move to in the mate report that they released, and that got released, well, at least publicly, earlier this year. It was after the trial. I can't remember which month it was. But it's basically the entire investigation since 2015. And there was quite some interesting things. And two people's names came up. And it was Sean Connolly and Patrick Wilson's name came up. And as I said, we're going to really deep dive into this a little bit. But it was these two kids. I think they were 18 and 19 at the time. And so they got a tip that these guys, and it was Sean, and I'm not sure which one is who. I forget. If you know in chat, let me know. I can't remember which one is Sean and which one's Patrick. But Sean was the one supposedly driving. He was supposedly driving under the influence of alcohol. Wilson was the passenger. And as we see on the map here, we can see where Sean Connolly's address is at. And if we see where Stephen Smith's body's laying, and if you were to assume that Smith was walking home, and let's say Sean Connolly was heading home or leaving home, that would line up, their paths would cross. So, I mean, that would kind of make sense. And it's believed in an interview that they was said that they had, one of them admitted to their stepfather that they hit something. They didn't know what they hit. One of them went back to the crime, or back to the scene, realized what they hit, and then went back. And yeah, so we'll look at that interview, listen to it just a little bit, and then I've got more. There are some crazy connections, not just with the Murdaughs, and it's not really, like I said, it's not Buster, it's not Alex, it's a few other Murdaughs, and I wouldn't say there's maybe ill intentions, but we don't know, and there's a little bit more. So I'm gonna play a video so I can catch up on chat here, but I'm really excited to dive into this. So I'm going to go ahead and play a part of this here.
All right, welcome back to the Fitz News studio.
So Fitz News has been a pretty reliable source. They're local out there. I think this guy's name is Will. Oh, well, it's right in front of me. Will Folks. Um, they're the ones that released the mate report, and they do have their sources because they're obviously local out there. Sorry, I'm just trying to center it. Why I hate when that box comes down. I miss Windows 10. I really do. Um, anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip this to part 2 minutes here.
Driving son of Alec Murdaugh. But there's been very little in the way of fact, very little in the way of a theory of what actually happened to Stephen Smith as he walked down Sandy Run Road those early morning hours prior to his violent death. But over the last few months, we've started to gain that clarity. And it started at the end of the Murdaugh trial when agents and investigators with the South Carolina State Law Enforcement Division began focusing their attention more squarely on Stephen Smith's case. It also began when prosecutors in the Office of Attorney General Alan Wilson began utilizing the statewide grand jury to investigate Smith's death even further. Now, what were they looking for? What have they found? Well, a lot of it is very familiar to our audience because beginning in March of this year, after the Murdaugh trial, we started a detailed series of reports where we laid out all the evidence in this case. Because that's what you need to do in controversial cases like this, in cases without a resolution. You want to lay everything on the table. You want to start from the beginning. You want to turn the whole puzzle box upside down, if you will. That's a term our researcher Callie Lyons loves to use. But I'm using it in this case because it fits. But that's what we did in this case. We dumped everything on the table for everyone to see.
And they really did. I'm going to skip this a little bit more forward so we get to the... Okay, let's see. It's right here.
You can still go there, the Stephen Smith case files. But as we did that, over the last few months, a picture of what happened is finally starting to emerge. Our sources close to the grand jury have confirmed that Smith, while walking toward his home on Sandy Run Road, was struck quickly and violently by a fast-moving object on the front of his face at an angle, apparently as he was attempting to evade being struck. Almost instantaneously, there was a second impact, the back of his head on the pavement of Sandy Run Road.
So I might have skipped the first part. He mentioned, so his sources are from a grand jury. There were some people that were close to that grand jury. And so this is the sources. So this is huge. And so they obviously recently had, I'm not sure when, but they had a grand jury on this. And so obviously that's them looking at all of the evidence, probably a lot of evidence that we obviously don't know about, and probably until there's a trial we'll see. So as always with any case, there's always more evidence that the public does not know about. But in this case, what he's saying is that the grand jury heard something about a truck and a side mirror, which is originally reported. Well, it was originally thought it was a hit and run, but they kind of get more into specifics with a truck mirror, and we'll kind of put it all together. And there is some corruption. Like I said, I did realize there is some corruption at the end. And if you guys have been with me a long time, know that I'm not big on the corruption stuff. I mean, I do believe it happens, but in this case, there is some corruption going on. But anyway, he's saying that a truck side mirror had hit Smith, which is interesting. So keep in mind, if a vehicle is coming towards you and you're on the right side of it, the side mirror would be coming out, and you would think you would get hit on more of your left side. Unless you were turning, then you would get smacked in the right side. So that's what he's explaining about. And what he's saying is because he got hit in the head, that literally because of the force, and who knows how fast, if this is true, how fast they were going, it would have literally just sent him right smack down onto the cement. I mean, so it would have been just as bad hitting that ground as hard as he could have.
Literally within a second, these two seismic impacts Smith died at the scene where he fell. He died immediately. All the forensic evidence, which has now been reviewed and thoroughly re-reviewed, points to this conclusion. Smith was not killed somewhere else and dragged to the scene. His body was not dumped in the middle of the road. He died where he fell.
You guys are just in time for those just tuning
Now, what
in.
was the fast-moving object? As I've stated from the beginning, this investigation has been clouded by the crime scene, which is a study in contradictions. There was no vehicle debris. There were no skid marks. There was nothing at the scene that seasoned Highway Patrol investigators found to be consistent with a vehicular strike. And the pathologist who did the initial autopsy on Smith said that the only reason she concluded it was a vehicle strike was that he was in the middle of the road. Other than that, nothing to suggest a vehicle strike. In fact, Smith's body being in the middle of the road seemed to suggest that it wasn't, because again, if a car strikes someone, typically they tumble, they roll over and over off the side of the road.
And we're going to look at that different. We're not going to actually look at accidents, but we're going to look at just common logic and different vehicle hits, and just, yeah, we'll dive into that a little bit. And the reason why I think his case is unique, whereas, yeah, a lot of vehicles, and I think this is why there was a lot of confusion, or just, the scene didn't make sense, is because, his shoes, his body was in the middle of the road. Obviously this is Highway Patrol. They're probably used to seeing hit and runs, and probably, bodies are usually flown. They're usually flown off the road, or they're flown many feet, yards, whatever, from the accident. And usually shoes come off. I skateboarded for 12 years. I've taken some pretty gnarly falls, broken bones, and yeah, when you fall, and I usually have tight shoes on, I've had shoes come off. If you ever watch professional skateboarders and some of their slams, a lot of times there's a shoe, or at least a shoe, goes flying.
Shoes are typically knocked off of them. Smith's loose-fitting shoes were on him when his body was found. Nothing about this crime scene indicated a vehicular strike, and yet, again, all the forensic evidence, including the flow of blood from Smith's body as he died on that scene, clearly indicated that he died, again, right where he fell. So how do you balance these apparent contradictions? But we're starting now to put that narrative together as we look at the evidence that we've released, again, on Fitz News, interviews that pointed to the theory of the truck mirror. We've talked about this. This is no secret. This is something that's been out there. It's been in the case files for some time. But there's never been anything that has tied it to the current investigation. And in particular,
I'm going to let this play for just a minute. I got to turn down my heat. It turned back on.
to the evidence and the testimony that grand jurors are hearing related to this case. Well, now there is. This past week, we exclusively reported on FitzNews.com that grand jurors were hearing testimony related to this truck mirror theory, which holds that it was an extended mirror from a truck driven by one of two primary suspects, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, which created the 7.25-inch massive laceration on Smith's head. That was the first impact, which then created that second instantaneous impact of the back of his head on the pavement. Now, what specifically that evidence is at this point, we don't know. We do know that, as we reported this week, one of those two primary suspects in this case allegedly indicated deception regarding some component of this truck mirror theory. We also know that Mark Bickart, who described himself as Stephen's boyfriend at the time he died, spoke of Smith allegedly being accosted by two, quote, rednecks at a convenience store in the hours before his death. Bickart recalled hearing mud tires in the background of his final conversation with Stephen Smith just moments before he died. Could that have been the truck that struck Smith with that mirror? And could the fact that it was a mirror explain the fact that there was no vehicular debris? Could it explain the fact that there were no evidence of any kind on that scene indicating a vehicle strike?
And that would kind of make sense if it was just the side mirror that hit the person. Because usually, this day and age, the side mirrors, they got the mechanisms that, if you hit something, it's instead of just completely breaking off, they just kind of bend forward or back. I'm sure if anybody's hit anything with their side mirror, usually it just bends one way or the other. At least with most newer vehicles, I'm sure they added that in for a reason.
According to our sources inside the grand jury, the answer to those questions are yes. According to our sources inside the grand jury, they are hearing evidence related not only to the truck mirror theory, but allegations of deception amongst the two primary suspects related to that truck mirror. Now, what is that evidence? We don't know. We do know from our previous reporting that these two individuals have been linked to, again, allegations of deception related to their stories about where they were on the night Stephen Smith was killed. But which suspect? Which truck? Again, these are things we don't know yet because, again, the specific evidence that's being presented to this grand jury, folks will not release it to us. And I understand that. It would technically be a crime.
Right. So obviously, so he has the sources inside the grand jury, and obviously they saw evidence, much evidence that we probably, like I said earlier, we probably won't know or see until if there is a trial. But I don't know. I'm a little skeptical on that. I'm a little worried, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. But yeah, it's a huge bombshell if you haven't heard that. I mean, it's kind of coming full circle in a way because originally it was thought to be a hit and run, and then the Alex Murdaugh trial, and then there was reopening the case because of the Alex Murdaugh trial, and then the name Buster was coming up, but really that was just all kind of third party hearsay when you look at all the interviews, and so and like I said, we're going to take another closer look at the scene. I even have a screenshot, which I believe is the vehicle. I'm not 100% sure if it is, but especially if it is, this would totally make sense with the mirror. So we are going to look at that real quick. So pull this back up here. And let me see what's going on in chat. Yeah, you may get some ads. Like I said, my last live, YouTube is trying something different. They're basically now inserting ads during the live. You can kind of choose to have them like low, medium, high. I do have it on low, but this is my primary job, and most money comes in. A good portion is from ads. But during the live show, please just skip them so we can you can get to the show. But it also helps if you can to donations. I do just want to quickly shout out so I don't forget Deborah. She sent me a PayPal the other day, and thank you so much. Everything really helps this channel, means the world, and yeah. So, and one who sees has been a member for 10 months now. That is so awesome. Hey, Steve in chat. I don't know. Is Steven here? I heard he was on a plane, which, when we get a second to take a break, I would love to know, how in the hell they got him to get on a plane, because he does not get on planes. That must be something important. I'll have to reach out to him. So, okay. So here are the two guys. I can't remember who is who. As far as the two guys that I have up, this is Sean and Patrick. One was the driver, one was a passenger. Apparently, one was under the influence. If this is what happened, So, apparently, they say that their alibis were inconsistent, and law enforcement believes, just like he said earlier, that there was deception when it came to their stories and their whereabouts on the night of Smith's death. And the question I would raise is, why hasn't either person of interest, clearly they have to have known that their names have been out there, especially now after the Murdaugh case, with everything kind of coming to light. If you were innocent, you would think that they would be kind of a little more outspoken or, come in and do interviews. It really sounds like, from the little that we know, um, it doesn't seem, and we're going to listen to actually another clip here. And the guy was trying to get in touch with one of them, and it seemed like the guy was completely blowing him off. And to me, that seems a little bit suspect. So here is the picture of what could be the truck. I don't know 100%, but I think this is huge. I found this, um, and let me know in chat, because I'm not a big truck guy. So if anyone can kind of, I know this is, you can't go off a lot with this picture that I have, because it's just a small picture looking at the side mirror. But this apparently comes from Sean Connolly. It's TikTok, which now has been, as you can see, he has privated his account. But he's from Hampton, South Carolina. So this is the Sean Connolly. But yeah, let me know in the chat. I'm gonna leave this up for a minute. But does anyone can recognize, maybe see anything that you can give me an idea of what kind of vehicle, truck this may be? Clearly, this is what's called so it's a side mirror, but it's a double mirror, which is, I believe, called a convex mirror. So basically, the one on the top is made for one mirror is made to see kind of, to the side, to the right, and then the other mirror is more focused on behind you. So I'm assuming they do this for trucks, especially if trucks got, cargo or something, and you can't really use your rear view mirror. You've got one mirror on both sides that are pointed more towards the back, kind of making up for your rear mirror if you can't see out your rear view. And then you've got the other mirror, which is just, the normal ones that we're used to. So let me know in chat. I'm going to leave this up for a little bit. Anyone notice anything? You can tell from just the interior what truck this could be. But the main thing is now knowing if this is his truck. This is a big mirror. This isn't just one side mirror. This is the convex mirror. So obviously it's got a much bigger dimension. And if a side mirror was the thing that hit Smith, this thing would be much bigger, and it would be quite the possibility that it was what hit Smith. And keep in mind, Smith had, so he got hit, on the right side of his face, and he also had a dislocated shoulder. And I could see, and they believed that he was trying to kind of dodge it. And I have an idea, but I think he was trying to dodge it, and of course, anybody, we're going to try to protect ourselves, and we're going to kind of maybe crouch and dip. And so I could see maybe him raising his shoulder, and you would get, especially with a mirror that big, I don't know the exact dimensions of that mirror. I was trying to look, but I just didn't have enough time. But with that dimension of mirror, I mean, I could clearly see it hitting his shoulder and his face. And would, depending on how fast they were going, would do some very significant damage, sadly. Just seeing, I think one of those King Ranch. Those came on. Oh, let me write this down. Okay, so we got somebody. Yeah, I love trucks, but I've never had one, so I'm not. So Spaghetti says those come from the 25-35 size pickup for towing. Oh, interesting. And when you say 25-35, what model and make would you say spaghetti? Are we talking Dodge Ram? Because I thought we could kind of look at that towards the end of the show. Um, but interesting. Maybe we'll come back to that. But I really appreciate that because, yeah, it would be kind of interesting to look at that. Especially, I wonder, with those paint chips, could this mirror, could this vehicle be blue? And, a lot of times, um, the vehicle, usually those side mirrors are black, silver, but a lot of times they do match the vehicle's color as well. So you do kind of have a switch. So here is just a look at some people standing. I was trying to find pictures where people are standing close to their side mirror, and especially if this truck is got some kind of lift to it, and especially just the mirror itself being a much bigger dimension than your normal. So clearly, the one that's on Sean's truck is much bigger. It's almost twice the size of this. So much more potential to hit, a broad area. But it would line up. I don't know Smith's height at the moment. I know I could probably look that up. And I don't think that's a huge, I mean, it plays a part, but considering if he's going to duck and he's trying to dodge, obviously he's going to lower his body. So I don't think height is like a huge thing, because if you're trying to dodge, you're going to probably be ducking and you're going to be making yourself smaller. So, but here's just kind of a look at, the height of where people stand close to the mirror, just to kind of give you an idea. And he looks kind of pretty average height there. Okay. And like I said, towards the end of the video, we're going to get into the connection with Alex Murdaugh, or the Murdaughs. Not really Alex, but the Murdaughs, and the connection, what led SLED to Alex to Stephen Smith, because that has been one of the biggest questions. And I think we have it now, at least a good idea, which I was so excited I discovered this before the show. And then on top of that, the corruption that I discovered just before I went live. I was like, holy shit. And I usually don't say that word, but holy hell. Okay, so here's just looking at the scene, and we're just going on assumption. If you don't believe he was hit, I respect that, but today we're going to be kind of, because according to the Fitz News sources, they're saying that these are the guys, and they were brought up way early on in the investigation. And what was the reason? Why didn't they investigate him further? And I think we have the answers to that too. So that's why I say there is a little bit of corruption. So we're going to look at that. Christine, thank you so much. Member for a whole year now. Hey, Chris, mods in chat. Thank you so much for the 12-month membership. That is so awesome. That helps me out so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Christine. Please show her some love in the chat. That is so awesome. Great time to be a member. I always do something at least once a week for the members. It's a great way to support this channel, and same thing with Patreon. So here we're looking at what I've got is a small little screenshot. So this little part right here is just the top part. So sadly, the crime scene photo, or I guess we could call it crime scene photos of Stephen Smith are out there, sadly. So be very careful if you're looking into this case. Most of them are blurred, but you can find some that are graphic. So be careful. What I took is because I wanted to know exactly which way he was facing, because I think this will give an idea of what direction the truck was heading. And so as you can see, I've got this. This is just a small top portion screenshot of the actual crime scene photo. And right here, it's blurred out, but his head would be right here. Now you can see where the dotted line is, right? So really, if we flip this picture upside down, this is what we get. So this is where his head would be. Now he wasn't laid flat out. He was kind of on his side. So he's actually laying kind of on his left side, but his head was this way, which I think is huge to note, to keep in mind. So that's what he was. That's the direction his body was laying. So, and the way we're looking at this road is we are looking kind of north. It's kind of uh, northwest a little bit, but we'll just say north, not to make it confusing. So north is going this way, south is coming towards us. Now he would be heading north. So it makes me wonder, was he walking? Which is weird because his sisters even came out and said this, that, usually if he was going to walk, he wouldn't walk in the middle of the road, nor would he would normally even kind of veer off maybe into the tree line. And we've heard her sister say that, or his sister say that. So it's kind of interesting. And he is a little, does raise a bit of a red flag as to why would he be walking in the middle of the road, unless there's a little bit more that we just don't really know. Miss Fancy, yes, the towing mirrors was standard in a lot of Ford trucks. Interesting. And I was looking up that the Ford F-150, which doesn't quite match the height in the mirror, but Ford F-150 was one of the most popular trucks in Hampton, South Carolina during that time. Oh, Papa Smurf. Oh, gee. Stephen Smith was 5'7". Oh, right on. Okay, maybe if we get some time, we'll look at some dimensions here. But thank you so much, Papa. All right, 5'7". Yeah, I knew he wasn't tall and he wasn't really short, but I guess, average height. Okay. So now the question is, so if Smith was walking, and let's just say he was walking on the road. Now, obviously it's just one lane each. So if I were walking on the road, either night or day, obviously I would want to walk on the oncoming traffic because I would be able to see an oncoming car coming and I could just easily walk off to the side of the grass. Whereas if you're walking towards with the direction vehicles are coming from behind you, you wouldn't be able to see them, and it'd be an issue. And obviously you'd be having to keep turning your head back. So is it possible that he was walking? Now keep in mind this is 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. Um, Probably not a lot of traffic, if any. Maybe a car every 10-15 minutes, and that's just complete speculation. So maybe he's just kind of strolling along. I mean, this is not the exact area. This is approximate area. I think it's a little bit further down where he got hit, but this is pretty close. It's close to this house, which is really kind of odd. I think it's just past it, actually. So there's a couple of scenarios in this situation. Is if he was walking on the oncoming traffic lane, and there's two ways the trucks could have hit him. Just assuming, we're just hypothetical here. He could have, the truck could have tried to swerve to the right a little bit and still hit him with the driver's side mirror, knocking him out this way. Or the truck could have veered over and hit it with the passenger side mirror. Um, but I think this definitely, the way his body's laying gives us an idea of the direction the vehicle is coming. Let me put live chat on. I have my live chat on. There we go. Hopefully I'm not missing it. But let me know in the chat if this makes sense. That the direction his head's facing should be the direction that he got hit in. So obviously you get hit in the face or you get pushed, you fall back. So if I push you, you fall back. The force that's coming is the direction. If you fall back, your head is facing the direction the force is coming. So if his head is here, that would assume that the impact, the energy of the object that hit him was coming from the north to the south, if that makes sense. Because if his body was the body was flipped around, then you would think that he was hit as somebody was driving north. So, talking about the 10 1mm paint chips, because like I said, there's the one thing that really made him question about the hit and run. It was just the lack of vehicle debris. The only thing we have is the 10 1mm paint chips that are blue. And now, usually, a lot of the side mirrors are black or silver, but some do have colored that match the vehicle's color, like this situation here. So it makes me wonder, could those blue paint chips be from the side mirror that hit him? And these were found on his clothing. So let me know what you think in chat. It's certainly a possibility. And who knows? I mean, those blue paint chips could have came completely from something else, but that's really the only thing that's kind of mentioned, because there's not a lot when it comes to the crime scene itself. But now we're gonna get in even more deeper here. Yay, a half year under my belt. Laugh out loud. Ruthie the Sleuthy, thank you so much for the 6 months. You are so awesome. The support really means a lot. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let's see here. Get caught up. Ford Raptor does not have tow mirrors. Interesting. Bungee cord, the mirror would have broken into a million pieces on the road. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, certainly not an expert in that. You would think, and I get what you're saying, you would think that the glass would shatter. But that's why I say, with the new thing with these mirrors is that they're made that they can get hit either from the front and the back, and they move. So I wonder, he still got hit, but it didn't completely break the side mirror off. But there is a report that he got his mirror fixed. So there's a lot more. So here's just kind of a look. I mean, I don't know if you call this common sense, and I'm sure there's a lot more to this, and I'm probably not the best person to explain, impact, but I think this kind of makes sense a little bit. The force that impacts the body would change depending on the area hit. So that's why they were really confused, is because usually a typical hit and run involves the body being hit. And usually they're hit by, the actual car, not just the side mirror. They're hit, by the front end. And so that means you're getting hit at your lower to center mass, which is really going to most likely lift you and then throw you. And that's why they're used to, when hit and runs, the body's flown either, off the side of the road, or there's car debris, or there's clothing like the shoes, flown off. But if he was hit just center mass, so he was hit up high and not mid, it would make sense for him to be violently knocked back and just slam the ground. I mean, you heard Will talk about it, that from what they say is that this side mirror hit him at such a high rate of velocity, that it just as he got hit with the mirror, that he literally slammed to the ground, which would have been just as almost as devastating, I would assume. And so that makes sense, and that's why his body didn't really go anywhere. He just got hit very high up in his body, which just would cause him to slam down. And then obviously it would hit his head on the concrete, probably, and that would just be quite traumatic to the body, sadly. Chris, 2010 plus Ford F350. Okay, I'm writing some of these down, and we'll look at them here. Where did I write the other one down? Oh, there it is. $350. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I really appreciate that, because yeah, we got a lot more here, because it's gonna come full circle. Okay, so the connection. I got to take a sip because I'm really excited about this, because this has been the biggest thing. So, when SLED started investigating the Alec Murdaugh case, they came across something while looking into his case that led SLED into reopening the Stephen Smith case. So they found something while investigating Alex Murdaugh. That doesn't mean directly that Alex Murdaugh did something, but there was something. And keep in mind, if for those that, I think most of you probably watched the trial and know that not only did they focus, a lot on the crime scene itself, but his financial situation, which I think that's going to be the bigger picture here as far as the connection. It's all going to come together here. But I think there was stuff that they looked into when they were looking into the financial side of stuff that they uncovered, and that led them to reopen the Stephen Smith case. But of course, when that happened, many months later or after the trial, when we heard about that, and then of course, the family hearing rumors about Buster's Murdaugh name was mentioned. But keep in mind, this was by third party. I mean, you can go back and listen to a lot of that stuff, and it's really hearsay. A lot of it is just hearsay. They say supposedly Buster was with a couple of other people, and they hit Smith with a bat. But like I said, that was really just more or less hearsay and nothing really anything concrete. But it definitely got everybody talking. That's for sure. So, but at this time, it appears that there, as far as Buster Murdaugh, there is no direct connection between Buster and Smith that we know of. So what was it? What is the connection? And we are gonna get into it now. So some of this stuff I just came across before the live show, so I'm so excited because I'm like, oh my gosh, this really starts putting all the puzzle pieces together. Stacy, member for 15 months. Man, we got a lot of year milestones, over a year. That's so amazing. Thank you for all you do. I live in South Carolina, and this case has always bothered me. Thank you so much, Stacy. I agree. But I think this is all coming full circle. I'm not kidding. And so thank you so much for the amazing support. It really helps. Um, and Purple Puddles, what that's a beautiful name. Thank you so much. Purple's actually wearing purple right now. Kind of one of my favorite colors. Thank you so much for the 4.99. That really helps me out. So thank you so much, Purple Puddles. Um, okay, so here we go. I'm gonna read. Well, actually, I'm gonna show these. Okay, so I'm sure you recognize some of these. If you don't, let me just clear up who we got here. So we got Alex Murdaugh here. Let me blow this up just a little bit. Bring that over. There we go. So of course we know this guy is Alex Murdaugh. We've got Randy Murdaugh, who's his brother. Now, Randy Murdaugh, for those that may not know, he arrived at the scene shortly later that morning, um, trying to see what was going on. And now, keep in mind that the Murdaughs, obviously, um, they're lawyers, and their main thing is trial accident injury cases. So this motor vehicle accidents, that's their thing. So obviously they're going to get word that there was a hit and run. Obviously they're going to be jumping on it, and they're the big dogs, in the county when it comes to this. So it's kind of not a surprise that one of them would be showing up because that's just their job. So, what is the connection? And here it is. So, keep in mind, give me just a second. I'm just wondering, should I play? No, we'll read this because I've already got it up. And then I've got to play that other interview to really put it all together here. But, okay. So, as if these connections weren't sufficient to raise eyebrows, on August 7th, 2015, so literally a month later since Smith's death, Randy Murdaugh filed a motor vehicle accident lawsuit against Conley on behalf of his client, Christopher Steele. Now, this is something I'm going to look into after the show because, like I said, I discovered a lot of this. And so I still got a lot more to dig into. But this is definitely the beginning to the connection that we've been all kind of wondering about. So, Randy Murdaugh is in a lawsuit against Conley with his client Christopher Steele. I have no idea what that's about. But then, less than a year later, on May 17, 2016, another Murdaugh attorney, so not Randy, but another Murdaugh attorney, filed a separate motor vehicle accident lawsuit against Sean Connolly. So just to recap, Sean Connolly is the guy that's supposedly down here. Like I said, I can't remember which one's who. So we got Sean and Patrick, but I'm not sure which one's which. And they're the supposed two suspects. And the crazy thing is how in the hell do they have how does one guy have two vehicle accident lawsuits, motor vehicle accident lawsuits, within a year period? That's really wild. Let me know what you guys think about that in the chat. I know it's kind of a lot to digest. I'm read it again. So Randy filed a motor vehicle accident against Conley, not on the behalf of Stephen Smith, but on a client, Christopher Steele. Yes, less than a year later, another Murdaugh attorney files a separate motor vehicle accident lawsuit against Conley. So there's two vehicle accident lawsuits against Conley in less than a year. I mean, is this guy just driving around hitting people? Or is there something else going on? But that's just weird. So I think this is kind of the opening to the connection of where they were looking into the Alex Murdaugh case. They heard Randy, was there at the scene that morning, kind of wondering what's going on. Then suppose he told his Stephen Smith's mother something, I forget. You can remind me in chat. Um, but yeah, then he has these two lawsuits that eventually go against Conley. And it's just weird that they're motor vehicle accident lawsuits. It's just kind of odd. And then, if it couldn't get any weirder, both actions, so these two lawsuits that were brought up by Randy and another Murdaugh, were later dismissed by Murdaugh-friendly judges in the 14th Judicial Circuit. So, what the heck was that all about? So they raise these lawsuits against Conley, but then they're dismissed. So were they using that to look into these guys? It's weird, and it's going to get even weirder. We're going to get into the corruption, and for those that if you've been with me, I'm not. Like I said, I do love to get into the conspiracy stuff and corruption, especially police. I'm not big on. I know it does happen, but in this case, it's there in my opinion. Okay, so let's see. Read this. So also it says, so all I know is SLED has reportedly zeroed in on Conley and Wilson as the top suspects in the investigation. As the agency brings additional resources to bear on this crime. Also, according to our law enforcement sources, at least one of these persons of interest, so either Conley or Wilson, attempted to manufacture an alibi regarding their whereabouts on the evening his life was taken, which is obviously a major red flag. So here is basically, in my opinion, let me know what you guys think in the chat. This is the kind of the beginning of the explanation as to Murdaugh, what they supposedly found, and how it kind of related to Stephen Smith, and what did it, So I think it's something in these lawsuits that they discovered when they were looking into Alex Murdaugh. Because obviously, keep in mind, they're looking into his financial situation. They're looking to what everybody else is kind of doing close to him. So it only makes sense that they would look into Randy and anybody close to Alex and see what's going on. So I think this is clearly the beginning. Let me see what's chat. And then we're going to get into the corruption here in just a second. I got to take a sip. Papa Smurf OG, I like this channel. Great work, Mob Crew and the mods. Thank you so much, Papa Smurf. That means so much to me. It really does. I spend a lot of hours before shows putting all these diagrams, and so I'm a very visual person, so I always like to have these kind of PowerPoint presentations, and so I definitely spend many hours putting this stuff together. Oops. Okay, hold on. All right, so we're going to get to the corruption part, but we got to play a video. Well, actually, it's an audio, but trust me, this is going to really blow some minds here in just a second. If you haven't heard this. I mean, this has been out for a couple days. Now, this is 12 minutes. I'm not going to play the entire 12 minutes. But I'm going to give you the context of what's going on. So, we originally knew that they're from the mate report, which is kind of, it's just a report that they've, I'm not sure how many years are in it, how up to date. It is pretty close to up to date when they released it. which just includes interviews with just it's this Stephen Smith case and what the Highway Patrol looked into, what they were told. But we heard about an interview from a guy named Daryl Williams, and we'll put together like who's who after. But in this phone call, we have get it for it. So in this phone call, the two people are talking. So we have Corporal Duncan here. He's the one calling up Nick Ginn. Now Nick Ginn, this is going to be huge. Nick Ginn works for the Hampton, South Carolina. I think he's just an officer there. I'm not sure his exact title. But supposedly, I think Ginn, I'm not sure exactly. Maybe they mentioned this in this. But Corporal Duncan gets an email. And the email says, hey, I just heard from this guy that his stepson supposedly told him that he was possibly responsible for the hit and run that was involved recently. And so now this Corporal Duncan is responding and calling Nick Ginn up and saying, hey, what do you know? And it gets wild.
I will be calling him from my office phone here in Charleston. The number to the Hampton Police Department will be 803. Again, this is in reference to KCL-062-15. This is in reference to a Stephen Smith investigation in this case.
Sergeant Ginn.
Sergeant Ginn, this is Corporal Duncan with the Highway Patrol.
Hey, man, how you doing?
Good. I'm calling you in reference to, I believe somebody come to you about a case we have there in Hampton County. In reference to a hit and run or possible hit and run, somebody claiming that information. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you got just a minute I can talk to you about that?
Sure. Let me get a piece of paper here. I'm at somebody else's desk right this second.
Okay.
That way, if I need to write something, I can write it. Give me 1 second.
All right, that'd be fine.
All right. All right, Corporal, you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. Some of our phones have line 1, some of them don't. So.
All right, I understand.
Wonderful technology.
I know, that's what I was about to say. It's always that way sometimes when you start talking about technology.
That's right.
This case that we've got, I'll go over a little bit about. We've got some information, about certain things, and this was a tip that was given to us from, I believe, a Patrick Wilson. It's a he said, she said deal that we've gathered that information so far.
Right.
And I believe this come from is it a Darren Williams? Is that correct?
It's Daryl.
Daryl Williams. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so the email, I guess, from what it sounds like, came from Daryl Williams. Now, Daryl Williams is the stepfather to was it Sean Connolly or Patrick Wilson? He'll say it here in just a minute. But not only that, well, I'm going to play it and then I'll.
And do you know Daryl?
Yes.
Okay. How do you?
He is my stepdad, technically.
Okay. All right. And supposedly Patrick Wilson told him this information about.
Right. Daryl was dating Patrick's mama.
Okay.
So Patrick's kind of looked at him as a father figure, over the past, I don't exactly know how long they were together, but basically he just looked at him as a father figure. He came fishing and hunting and things of that such. So. Okay.
Can you tell me what was told to you? We've tried to get in touch with Patrick, but he's kind of avoiding the call, the contact, and all.
Right. Basically, Daryl called me, and he said, look, this is what I was told. He said, Patrick, come over here to the house. He said, he told me that Sean Connolly was drunk and hit something. He said he went back the next day to see what it was he had hit, and he seen a lot of police out there. So he talked to one of the cops, and then he had left, and then he learned, I guess by media, that somebody had been killed in that same area. That's why the police were there.
Okay.
So with him telling, he said that Sean called him crying, saying that that's what had happened.
Okay.
And then Patrick was telling Daryl, and Daryl told me that Patrick was crying telling him, and after he got finished telling the story, he walked outside his house and threw up.
Okay.
He said, Nick, this is just me thinking. He said, but I think that Patrick was with him. He said, why else would he throw up and get all upset like that? Because somebody else, had done something.
Right.
So I'm going to explain what's here, and the bombshell is going to be coming here in just a minute. I mean, huge bombshell. We're going to put it all together. I missed this early on. Southern Charm, thank you so much for the $2.99. That helps me out so much. I know it's tough times, but yeah, to be able to do this show, donations really help. So if you could, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. So what he's saying is that, this guy comes forward, this little stepfather, he hears the son, he hears about the stepson, and basically the stepson, which is Sean Connolly, he, according to his story, is that, when they were driving at night, they thought they hit something, they go home or whatever, and then early that morning, or just hours, I guess, maybe, apparently Connolly goes back without Wilson. He goes by himself, and he actually goes back to the scene and notices that there's cop cars and everything. There's it's taped off and everything. Big thing going on. And he actually, Connolly apparently even asks the officer, hey, what's going on? And the officer tells him, hey, there's a poor dead kid in the road, and then he gets on the phone, and I think he tells that to Wilson, who was obviously supposedly the passenger, and so that's why when Wilson's kind of explaining the story, he gets sick, and so just kind of catch you up on that part there.
Right. Did he go into any detail about how it happened? Do you know? I mean,
supposedly he had fixed his mirror. He had patched one of the mirrors up on the
That's huge. Patched up a mirror.
truck.
okay, all right. I pulled all of his records, and I was looking to see what kind of vehicles they had, and I didn't know if he described basically how he hit him or how what happened.
It was supposedly the mirror, and I don't know. I got Mitch. I think I sent him the pictures of the truck that he's driving, and then he would have been driving that night.
Okay, all right.
But I'm pretty sure, I want to say that I sent everything to Mitch.
Mitch.
Yeah, Altman.
Okay, Altman. And is that okay?
Because him and my brother and all grew up, and he and I are pretty good friends, and I didn't know exactly who to contact. So my first thing when I got off the phone with Daryl was, all right, Mitch popped in my head, Highway Patrol. So I called Mitch, and
okay.
He said he would get that information where it needed to go.
All right, and so basically, just your knowledge of it is a third party, is from what Darren is telling you.
Right. He said he was concerned, and somebody needed to know because somebody's lost a son and stuff like that. And he said that's just something that you don't just sit on if you know anything about it. So.
When did he come to you about this? I mean, we got this. Let me see. We got this tip. We got this back on December the 9th, and we've had a couple of people out looking for Patrick. But then my thought was, well, let's just let's see what was told.
I think it's coming
from
up here.
Someone else.
Right.
But when did he come to you about that? Do you recall? I mean, it came to us December the 9th.
It hadn't been no longer than 3 weeks.
Okay, all right. And I'm assuming he called you by phone. Is that correct?
Yeah, let me look, see. I might be able to find out when the recents in my thing here is.
Okay.
Maybe I missed it. Maybe it was at the beginning.
Well, that probably would have been about right. Because my phone's only going back to the 13th.
Okay, all right. So somewhere around the 8th or 9th or so.
Yeah, and I can look at Mitch's where I sent him a text message.
Okay.
Originally.
But you did send everything that you remember. You sent it to Mitch Altman.
Yeah, every time I got something new, I would send them.
Okay, all right. Have you heard anything else about other than this incident? Have you heard anything else about? I don't even know if you're aware of this wreck.
No, well, I heard some rumors around town, but as far as anything that I could say that had any kind of possible validity would be this.
Right. Just the only thing you've heard prior to this is rumors.
Right.
Okay. And
I found it was Wednesday, December 9th at 7:58 a.m.
Okay, December 9th. Let me write that down.
That's when I sent.
Must be in the beginning.
The 21st, 2015, case approximately 50, Officer Nick Jen. Again, this is in reference to Stephen Smith.
Yeah.
So again, this is Corporal Duncan with the Highway Patrol County, in reference to a hit and run or pop. May I talk to you about that?
Sure. Let me get a piece of paper. Line one, some of them don't. So
We're talking about technology. I'll go over a little bit about. We got from gather that information. Williams, is that correct?
It's Daryl.
Daryl Williams. Okay.
Yep.
And do you know Daryl?
Right here.
Yes.
Okay. How do
Yep.
you?
Okay, so right here. This is huge. Right here. Brenda, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. You are so awesome. Thank you so much for the support. You guys are so amazing. We almost got 500 people in here. If you can, please hit that like button. We got the big bombshell here coming. I mean, the suspects is huge. I mean, we've kind of already known about him if you've known about this case. But the corruption part and where I think the reason why this case stalled is coming right here. And here, listen to what this guy says. This is huge.
Yes.
Okay. How do
Yep.
you?
He is my stepdad, technically.
Okay.
Technically.
Okay. All right. And
Okay. This is huge. This is where I was like, and I mean, I just came across this just like 30, 40 minutes before I started this show because I was digging into the suspect aspect of it. And then I came across this and I was like, holy Nikes. This is huge. So we kind of broke the beginning of this connection that we've all kind of wondered about. And I know I've seen some people mention in the chat they still feel like there's more to the Murdaughs possibly being directly involved. And I mean, I respect your guys' opinions. I'm always kind of gone with the Occam's razor. And to me, this really is all kind of coming back as really what they thought in the beginning. It was just a little odd, but they knew about these guys, but they didn't do anything about it. And I think I know kind of have an idea why. So, Daryl Williams, he is a father, but he is the stepfather. And like I said, I can't remember which one, Sean Connolly, so I just have both pictures up here. So just keep in mind, he's stepfather of one of the boys, Sean Connolly. But not only that, he's the stepfather of Officer Jen, the person that we were just listening to. Keep that in mind for just a second. Which means Sean Connolly and Officer Jen would be technically stepbrothers. I mean, they wouldn't be blood related, obviously, but they got family ties. So, talk about a little bit of conflict of interest in this case here. That's huge. That's huge. And then there's a little bit more, because when I heard about that, I'm thinking, man, this case is stalled in many ways, and we've talked about the other ways, and I just don't have time today to go into that Anyway, this is much bigger on this part, but this is huge. So that means they all have ties. So, family's family, in some regards. Now, that does not excuse for them covering up if this is, what happened. This is absolutely terrible. But this, let me blow this up, make sure you guys can see this. All right. Okay, so get this. Let me take a sip of this before I read it here. Now, that interview we were listening to, that happened in December 5th, 2015, in the same first year that they were investigating Stephen Smith. So this was early days. Then they interviewed Jen in the fall of 2021. SLED does, a few months after the agency launched its investigation. It's not immediately clear what info was obtained by agents during the course of this interview. Also, a private investigator working for Charleston, South Carolina, Andy Savage, who represented Stephen Smith's family, no more, now it's Eric Bland, attempted to interview Jen around the same time in the fall of 2021 and was given a completely different story than the one that he told investigators in December of 2015. Which means, and he's an officer of the law, and he is giving two different stories. According to the private investigator, former U.S. Drug Enforcement DEA Stephen Peterson, Jen recanted his prior statements about Conley, the truck mirror, and the pictures he provided to South Carolina Highway Patrol. Jen denied all of that when I spoke to him, Peterson said. So now this Officer Jen, who is connected to Sean Connolly and Daryl Williams because they both have the same stepfather, and which makes them technically, stepbrothers. So family ties. And now he all of a sudden, years later, has now not only changed his story, but is denying these conversations, which are huge conversations. These are the, kind of admitting, damning, kind of second-hand confessions, and he's denying all of that. Let me get caught up in chat because somehow it just kind of stopped. Thank you so much, Teddy, the puppy mill dog. It's a great name. I'm always so happy to see Chris live. Thank you so much. It's been a week. I missed it. Yeah, the boyfriend, not to get off topic. Yeah, the boyfriend is weird. And like I said, we've kind of looked into it that angle. But this right here, to me, this makes a lot of sense. And if this is true, this is a state of corruption, which is something I normally don't really go into. We usually try to stick with facts. We do like to theorize. But this is, to me, this is a holy shnikes moment right here. Also, meanwhile, Williams reportedly changed his story as well. Daryl Williams, the stepfather, he changed his story as well, telling Peterson he's never said anything about Randy Murdaugh telling him to go to the police about Patrick Wilson. That was also one thing I forgot to mention earlier is, the connection with Randy and Patrick Wilson. That there's a lot that it's all coming like full circle, although there's still a lot that's still unexplained and that we don't know about. But I think this is really putting in my opinion, the best picture that we the clearest picture we've ever gotten as far as this case, in my opinion. Now, you guys may feel differently, and you may feel this was not a hit and run, and this was something else. But, I mean, keep in mind, this was something that was early on. As soon as, Stephen Smith's case was looked into, they got this, report about these two kids. And then if we listen to the interview just a little bit more, maybe I'll play just a little bit more. Let's see, we were at 6 minutes. We learned that, he's Corporal Duncan, the good guy. He's been trying to get a hold of both of them, but I think Wilson at this point in the conversation, and they're completely apparently they can't find.
Remember, you sent it to Mitch Altman.
As far as anything that I could say that had any kind of possible validity would be this.
Right. Just the only thing you've heard prior to this is rumors.
Right.
Okay. And
I found it was Wednesday, December 9th at 7:58 a.m.
Okay, December 9th. Let me write that down.
That's when I sent it to Mitch. I told him I needed him to contact me ASAP.
Okay. All right. As far as Patrick goes, what do you feel about Patrick? I mean, what kind of person you think he's?
As far as a good-hearted person, I think he is, but I think he's a little.
Is he shady? Yeah, I'm not trying to be.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be, put words in your mouth. Don't get me wrong, but that's the best way I kind of describe people sometimes when.
Well, that was the word I had in my mind, but I was trying to think of a better way to put it.
I understand.
So they're agreeing. These guy, one of the guy Wilson. Now, obviously, Wilson would be the passenger that we know of, if this is all true. But still, both of them basically are. I don't know if they're on the run or what, or if they're being protected by this Nick Ginn and maybe others as well. But I mean, that really is kind of just mind-blowing. And I think a lot of us kind of figured there was some kind of corruption going on. I mean, when you have the name Murdaugh involved, you just kind of go to assume that. But this is on a different level. And just one more time, this is Officer Ginn that we're listening to. His stepfather is Darrell Williams. He's the one that called in and said, "Oh, my stepson came to me and said that he believed he hit something in the road, wasn't sure, went back, talked to an officer, realized that it was a person he hit, and yeah, and then ended up emailing I think Officer Ginn. I'm not sure if it was just Ginn or others, but that's kind of how it started. And this was early on in the investigation. So it's kind of wild. This is really like a full circle, because it started with a hit and run. Then they did another, they exhumed Stephen Smith's body, did a second autopsy. They said they've got some great results. But we don't know much more than that. They did redetermine that the death was kind of ruled, I think homicide, but they didn't know the manner of death exactly. But yeah, that is pretty much it. I can kind of recap it and run through it real quick if I may have missed anything. But guys, have any questions? Let me know your thoughts. Do you guys think this adds up? I mean, if you kind of go on the side of Occam's razor, this was something that was there in the beginning. Even though the family did hear some rumors about Buster Murdaugh, like I said, again, they are just that, rumors and hearsay. There was nothing. They even say, I think, Buster Murdaugh was in another state. when this happened, so there's just no way that he could be there. But I haven't seen the actual proof of that. That's just another thing that's just kind of rumored. Um, but yeah, I mean, it is weird that, Smith would be walking in the middle of the road. So just a couple of theories I have, and like I said, I'm going to keep my eye on chat, see what you guys think here. Let me pull up the. Oh yeah, and I wanted to look up those trucks real quick as well. Um, so, and keep in mind. Oh, let me pull up just so you guys can see on Google Maps here. So, oh, I can't move that, can I? So about where, let's see, yeah, it's about there. So right about there is where he was hit. Now, if we go down the road, this is where Conley's house is. Yeah, at the time was right here. So it would make sense that he'd either be. So it looks like he was hit going south. So it could be that Connolly left his house, and this would. I mean, there's only so many roads. So obviously, if he left his house and he was in the direction going south, he would come across the path of Stephen Smith, which he was walking, I'd assume, north because his house would have been kind of over in this area here. So, but there could be also, we heard that according to the ex-boyfriend, who I know is a bit shady in that regards. We've definitely delved into Mark Bighart. He is an odd character, but really, he's supposedly the last person to talk to Smith, so he's kind of really only thing that we know that could be possibly the last things that happened to Smith. But according to him, he heard the last thing he heard was a big truck, mud tires, and the call ended. A little bit before that, Smith told him that he was being harassed at a gas station. Supposedly, in like I said, just quoting, rednecks were harassing him. 2 rednecks. So could have been Connolly and Wilson that are the 2 rednecks, and were they harassing him? And maybe were they driving back up and down the road? Obviously they supposedly under the influence, and were they messing around with him? And were they playing a game of chicken or something and took it a little bit too far and then hit him? I mean, there's so many possibilities. Let's see what you guys are saying. So what do we know about the 2 guys? So what do we know where those 2 guys are now? We really don't know. I'm sure SLED and the higher ups probably have a good idea. Now the one thing I didn't finish playing in the original, but I do want to take a look at those trucks real quick as well, is yeah, because there was a question earlier. Do you think this will be solved? And even he kind of asked that question to himself. Will this be solved? Because so much time has passed.
Stephen Smith.
And if it's true that Connolly got his truck fixed, so any evidence that what little evidence that probably would have been destroyed or repaired, whatever. And now, I mean, would they have enough to convict these 2? That's that might be very tough. I mean, we're so far. What is it? 2015. So we're 8 years. So yeah. Yeah, that will be very hard to prove. Yes, agreed. No cameras at gas station, right? And of course, then the other thing is they probably do. Most gas stations have them. I mean, they've had them for decades. But the problem is usually if they don't get there in time, they're usually re-recorded over. I think some places keep it up to a week, a couple days. They're all different. I'm sure as technology goes on, they'll be able to have servers and clouds that they can store, you know, weeks, months, whatever. But I'm assuming it's something that they probably end up recording over. So sadly, if there was any evidence like that, which would be great to show, where were they? Supposedly they have these alibis, but they didn't supposedly add up according to what they're saying. Let's see if there was anything else that he says here.
Smith, we're starting to zero in on, again, those two individuals at the heart of this case. And I want to raise this point. At our news outlet, we are very careful about the terms that we use. 48 hours after the graphic double homicide of which Alec Murdaugh has been convicted of, our news outlet referred to him as a person of interest in that investigation. I took a lot of grief for that story because at the time, the narrative was that Alec Murdaugh was a grieving father who just lost his younger son, a grieving husband who just lost his wife. Obviously, that is not the narrative. Now the narrative is that Alec Murdaugh is perhaps one of the most infamous family annihilators in American criminal history. But at the time we reported that, no one knew. So we're very careful. But according to our sources close to that grand jury investigation, the two individuals, Sean Connolly, Patrick Wilson, both 26, both of Brunson, South Carolina, are primary suspects in the death of Stephen Smith, in the murder of Stephen Smith. Now, where does the story go from here? Here's the troubling part. As if this entire story wasn't already sufficiently troubling, that it's taken 8 years to get us basically back to square one, back to the initial theories. Where do we go from here in this story? We could end up with a grand jury that doesn't charge. Do I expect that to happen? I don't know. But I've been cautioned from the beginning of this story, first in little whispers many months ago, into more vocal statements the closer we've gotten to this grand jury process, that there may never be sufficient evidence to issue charges in connection with this case. I hope that's not true. I hope that's not true because, again, in this case, clearly, the family of Stephen Smith deserves justice.
I'm sure we all agree with that. So let's just look one more time here. Yeah, I think I can pull them all up. Actually, let me do this. Bear with me just a second. I'm just going to put these all side by side real quick. Because, yeah, I think what you guys suggested here. Let's see. Let's do that. And... sorry, guys, I can't see chat at the moment. Ooh, yeah, that does kind of match up. Let me pull that one, and I got one more. Which is the white one. And flip it around. Okay. Let me save that. Okay. All right. That should be right there. There it is. So here is, just one last time, here is a look at supposedly, I don't know 100%, but apparently this was Sean Connolly's old TikTok. It's privated now. but we see a shot. It says SC really loves his truck side mirrors. Fortunately, I can't read the garbled message up here. Maybe I can. I tried to find the video, but unfortunately, his, like I said, his count's down, so I can't see what's read here. Maybe I can do some AI enhancement. Maybe I could figure out what it said there. But anyway, we could see that these double mirrors here, like I said, I think they're called convex mirrors. They got these two little things that come out. That kind of matches a little bit, but I think this is a 2024, so obviously that would be much later. They wouldn't have a 2024 at the time. This is a 2015, I think, or something like that. But yeah, I mean, that's a big mirror. I mean, keep in mind this, and that's quite tall. And if he was dodging, because they think he was kind of ducking and he got hit on the right side. Because if you think about it, if you're on the right side, oncoming traffic, you would think you would get hit on your left side. Or the left side would get the most of it. But if he was trying to dodge, turn his head, then yes, it would make sense for him to get smacked in on the right side. And obviously with how wish I could figure out the dimensions of that. I clearly that would probably even hit his face and his shoulder, because remember his shoulder got dislocated. Dodge Ram 250. Okay, you want me to look up one more? Okay, we'll look up one more. Let's see. Dodge Ram 2500. Let's see, we'll do 2009. Let's see, did I get everything? Tow mirrors. Is that what they call them? I saw convex tow mirrors. Oh, that just pops up the mirrors. But either way, I mean, we get the general idea, and a lot of them do. They have, I mean, a lot of them are black, but some do match the paint of the style of the truck. Like this one here, obviously this matches the style. So just kind of going back to the blue paint chips that they found, because like I said, they didn't really find anything else. It's possible. I'm curious, and it sucks because they don't mention what kind of truck. They talk about it in the interview. And suppose he gets sent some pictures of Conley's truck, but I haven't been able to find them. I'm going to deep dive and see if I can look into them. But so far, I haven't been able to find out what supposedly truck he had at the time. So, Britta Mad Hatter, Chris, I thought it looked familiar. No, Alan, I don't. Unfortunately, you know, in the interview, and I was really hoping he'd at least asked him, like, hey, what kind of truck it is. But he supposedly, Jen tells him, hey, I sent you pictures of the truck and everything. So, and then they go on to talk about other stuff. I was really hoping they would have mentioned. So I'm just going to recap real quick here because we've been running, wow, we've been running almost 2 hours. Holy cow. That's been going quite a bit. So we'll quickly recap just the big stuff here, just in case you're just coming in. So, where to start here? Okay, so we're not going to go over the timeline. I touched on that. You can always look at my previous videos or go back on this one. But, you know, his life was taken on July 8th. His body was found literally in the middle of the road. A tow truck driver found him at 4 a.m. It's believed he was hit at 3:30 a.m. So just minutes earlier before this guy showed up. Early on in the investigation, we had learned of two names, Sean Connolly and Patrick Wilson. Apparently, Conley was driving the truck. He was driving under the influence. He was 18, 19 at the time. I think both of them are 18, 19. And we look at the map here. This is where Smith's body was laying. And if we see the red arrow is the path of Conley's address. And literally, there's not a lot of side roads. So there's just like one main road here. And this would probably be the direction that Smith was walking. So he's probably walking home because his car's sitting here out of gas. Or they could have been leaving the house, which the same thing. They would have crossed paths either way. Apparently their alibis were not consistent. They showed deception when telling their stories. And this is all coming from a grand jury. We just played that earlier. This is where the sources are coming from, is that there was a recent grand jury on this, and that they heard about these guys, and that a truck was involved, and that they heard about a side mirror that was supposedly the thing that hit poor Stephen Smith. Sorry, I had to close that. And we believe on 100%, but I'm pretty sure this is Stephen Smith's truck. Or excuse me, not Stephen Smith. Sean Conley's truck, which as we can see, he's got a pretty big side mirror. It's not your average mirror, so it's much, it's wider and taller. So more area of impact. It's probably somewhat raised truck, I'm assuming. And someone in the chat was nice enough to tell me that Stephen is 5'7". So, I mean, that's about the right size. And then plus, they say that Stephen Smith was probably trying to dodge it. So, obviously, you're going to kind of dodge, dip, which would probably make you shorter, which would just line up with the height of this mirror. And he got smacked on the right face, which would make sense because you're turning. Even though if it was oncoming, you would think it'd be your left side. But if you were turning, you would get hit here. And he had a dislocated shoulder. They said that the impact was so fast that it literally just smacked him straight down. So he got hit and he went boom. And which would have been just as bad because he would have hit his head probably a second time on the cement, causing even more. They say he died more or less instantly, which I think is, it's terrible, but at least, he went quick and didn't have to suffer in any form. One thing I did realize is the position that he's laying. We talked about, I would assume that the direction your head is facing would be the direction that the force was coming from. Just as if anyone was to push someone, especially higher up the chest, head area, and if you fell back, that means you're falling back towards the force, the direction the force is coming from, which most likely means the truck was coming south from the north. And then we talked about a couple theories, he could have been hit by the driver's side mirror, or they could have tried to avoid him and went around and hit him on the passenger mirror. Who knows? It is odd that Stephen Smith was walking on the road. I mean, we don't know that, but it sounds like that was the case, even though the sister says that, he would have stayed off the road. But we don't know, the circumstances. Could these guys have been playing some ill intentions and messing with him, and maybe he was trying to flag down a ride and got hit? There's just so many theories. But really, we're starting to kind of understand everything. And then we talked about the blue chips, which if the truck was blue and it had blue, that could be the answer to the blue chips. And then the connection, just one more time, because that was the big thing. When they opened up the investigation to Alex Murdaugh, they found something there that caused them to reopen the case to Stephen Smith. That led to the rumors of Buster Murdaugh possibly being involved, because we heard that with the family. But this, I think, is the connection. I'll read it one last time. So, as if these connections weren't sufficient enough to raise eyebrows, on August 7, 2015, a month after Smith's death, Randy Murdaugh filed a motor vehicle accident lawsuit against Conley. So, the suspect driving that hit Smith. Randy Murdaugh filed a lawsuit against Conley, not on the behalf of Stephen Smith, but on the behalf of a different client, Christopher Steele, which I'm going to look into after this live. Less than a year later, another Murdaugh attorney, which we don't know, so I'm going to dig into that as well, filed a separate motor vehicle accident lawsuit against Conley. So 2 vehicle lawsuits against Conley in less than a year. So clearly something fishy is going on with that. And to even make it more weirder, both actions were later dismissed by Murdaugh-friendly judges in the judicial court. So it just weird. But that, to me, that is the beginning of the answers to where the connection, where SLED made the connection from Alex Murdaugh. And I'm assuming this is when they were looking into his financial situation and those closest to Murdaugh. So I think that's very huge. And I will definitely look more into that and see what we can find. And then the final bombshell is that the guy, Daryl Williams, who is the stepfather to Sean Connolly, tipped in a tip saying that Connolly had admitted that he was the one that hit Smith. He sent an email to Officer Jen and maybe others. Well, it just so happens that Officer Jen is the stepson to Daryl Williams. So, which would mean that Connolly and Officer Jen are stepbrothers. And it was probably the reason why this case got derailed. And then on top of that, Officer Jen, after, in the beginning saying that, he was told all this stuff by Daryl, that these 2 guys were involved. Then apparently, years later, changes his story and denies everything. So there's your corruption. So that is it. Let me know what you guys think. That's pretty wild. I mean, to me, that explains a lot. Sharon, and I know you feel a little bit differently. I believe Stephen Smith would have stopped off the road. I do not believe he was on the road. Listen to his sister. Oh yeah, I've listened to the interviews. He had a cell phone. He would have not walked on the road. Sister would pick Stephen up. Oh yeah, I've listened to it, Sharon, and I like that. I don't disagree that it's odd. Why in the hell are you walking in the middle of the road? But could there have been other circumstances? Could he have been being chased or something, and he was trying to flag somebody down? I mean, there's probably much more, some other things that we don't know. But to me, this, if you just go with Occam's razor, this makes the most sense out of anything that we've had, So, but we'll keep on an eye into it, and I'm going to look into these guys, because I am dying to know what are these connections, because clearly there's some shady things going down with these guys. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything else before we go. Did I miss TJ? Did I miss you, buddy? TJ, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. That means the world. I spent a lot of time putting this stuff together for you guys, and I really appreciate it. And like I said, members, Patreons, I put out something every week. We do tons of different things, comedy, behind the scenes, so much. I know a lot of channels, they do certain things, but I really try to mix it up, and I think people really like that. And sorry, I just lost my chat. Where'd it go? There it is. Anyway, thank you to everyone being here. If you can, please hit the like button before we go. Of course, we're going to play the outro. Let me get this ready. I may probably do some extra live streams. I may be live tomorrow. I'll try to let you guys know early, because I got to do some makeup shows, because this is my job, and I've missed the first 10 days, and it's not good. So, all right, guys. Thank you so much. To me, thank you, Chris. Good content. He does it all. It does all sound fishy. It is. There's definitely some fishy stuff, and we're gonna look into it for sure. Yeah, we're gonna be doing another pet outro. So if you're kind of newer to the show and you haven't sent in a picture of your pet, please email me. Nightbot's right there, and same with my mods with my email. You can email me, send in a picture of your pet. Please include the name, and we will feature them. We'll put another collage together and have a new outro. So I hope everyone has a wonderful Wednesday, and we will see you guys real soon. And of course, thank you to my wonderful mods, Jennifer, Karen, and Dia. You guys are amazing. Love you guys.